Hello everyone, I'm DanTheMan, and this is my review for parts 4 and 5 of Crisis on Infinite Earths. For those of you who hadn't seen my reviews or who don't remember how I did my reviews for the first 3 parts, these are going to be sort of my off the top of my head first thoughts that I recorded after just watched it. This isn't going to be as a scripted review like my normal reviews are, and I guess I'll just get to it. First of all, I loved it. It was kind of hard for me not to. I mean, it was Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 4 and 5. I pretty much already decided the whole concept that they've been doing was so awesome, they could do no wrong. I'm going to go ahead and give my reviews for 4 and 5 together. I was going to do them separately, but since I watched them together, obviously, it just made more sense to do them together. That way I don't accidentally get mixed up what happened in what episode. Although I'll try to keep my thoughts between Part 4 and Part 5 separate, more or less. So first of all, we go into Part 4. This is a nitpick, but it bugged me when they do this kind of thing, so I'm going to say it anyway. I don't get how Ryan Choi's beard was longer, but literally no one else's hair grew, and no one else had a beard. So apparently they had scissors and razors where they were. I don't know. I mean, I know the real reason. The real reason was so they could show some time had passed, but they didn't want to have to do that with everyone. He was the character that we hadn't seen so far, so changing his look wouldn't really seem that out of place. I like the scenes in the Speed Force where we sort of relived the past moments with Oliver meeting some of the Paragons that were stuck in the Speed Force with him, his early meetings with the Autumn, an early scene with Supergirl, Sarah Lance's death, those things. I liked how I thought they recreated them real good, since I'm pretty sure that they didn't use the original footage, they reshot those because of the way they had to mix in the new characters with it. They did a real good job with those. It was a nice little look back with Arrow ending, to look back on some of his most important scenes with the stars of the other CW shows. And we also got what was easily the biggest cameo of parts 4 and 5, Ezra Miller playing the Flash from the DC Extended Universe, most specifically the Justice League movie. That was great. I figured that they had to be holding someone back for us, but I really thought if it was someone like him, word would have leaked out, but somehow it managed not to. It didn't really serve much purpose, and the explanation for why it would happen, which Barry several times said shouldn't have been able to happen, was never actually given. It was total fan service, but it was good fan service, and I think it was really cool that the DC Extended Universe got to be represented in Crisis. I like the scenes in the past with Lex Luthor, Ryan Choi, the Monitor, and Supergirl. I never really saw a whole lot of Supergirl last season, so I didn't get to see a lot of Kara interacting with Lex in the Supergirl show. They have great chemistry, better chemistry than what little we saw of Superman and Lex in the CW shows in the Arrowverse, but then again, we may have just not seen that much of it. And then, at least for Part 4, it took us to the big moment, the battle in the ravine. I'll be honest, fights in a ravine have been overdone on TV because it's an easy location to film at, it's an easy location to do pyro at. But once the fight actually started, that was an awesome fight. It really made good use of the scene, made good use of the characters. Even though it turned out to not be the actual climactic battle with the Anti-Monitor, it still felt big and was very well done. Also, seeing the Spectre, or Oliver as the Spectre, square off with the Anti-Monitor was a nice moment, reminiscent of the comics. Obviously, it was much grander in the comics because they didn't have budgetary limitations. They could draw whatever George Perez and Marv Wolfman's imagination ran wild with. But for what they had to work with and for the obvious restrictions being an Arrowverse show, they did a real good job. And that was mostly my thoughts on Part 4. I feel like I didn't have much to say, but while it was a good episode, there weren't any big moments. I wouldn't call it filler because it was obviously very important to the plot, but I kind of feel like this one was meant to be one that was sort of, wouldn't be heavy on the guest stars, wouldn't be heavy on the cast except for the Paragons, Oliver, and the Anti-Monitor. It was probably a way to offset some of the cost with that element, but they did a good job with what they had, and they did a good job setting up for the big moment, which was what happened in Part 5. I don't think very many people, at least that were familiar with the comic books, were surprised by the revelation that after the battle, the new Earth was built, or formed, or whatever you want to call it, and all the worlds were combined, so now Supergirl and the Flash and all the others from Earth 1 were now in the same world. For anyone that may not be familiar with the comics watching this video, that was pretty much what Crisis's end result was meant to be. was to merge all the alternate Earths, which in the comics were causing even more problems than having Supergirl on a different Earth did, and put them all on one Earth and sort of merge the characters and the history and rewrite history a little to make it all work and to add some interesting new elements to the characters. Pretty much the minute Crisis on Infinite Earth was announced, everyone assumed, well, Supergirl's finally going to be on Earth 1 with the rest of the heroes, which was pretty much what happened. We also, as an added bonus, got Black Lightning on the same Earth. Since Black Lightning did a crossover episode of sorts and had been on this, again, most people figured he would officially be part of the Arrowverse with this and be put in the same Earth. So we got that too. Wasn't a big surprise, but it was very well done. I like seeing Supergirl face off against, is it Weather Witch or Weather Wizard, I guess? Weather Witch, I don't know. The original Weather Wizard's daughter. You know who I'm talking about. I feel bad that I don't know for sure. But seeing Supergirl face off against a Flash villain, that was a nice little way to sort of bring in the revelation. Speaking of revelations, I don't know where they're going with the Lex and Lena Luthor thing. I like that they're going to give a new playground to play with, but obviously Lex Luthor is not suddenly going to become a good guy, and if now Lena and her whole animosity with Supergirl was undone, I don't know. Obviously that's going to play out in Supergirl going forward, and it was nice to give that sort of teaser, but I'm not sure what I think of that. I guess we'll find out when Supergirl starts. The other thing, as a comic book fan, the fan of the original Crisis I loved, and a fan of the Teen Titans for that matter, was Marv Wolfman. The man, the myth, the legend, Marv Wolfman, made an appearance. Playing himself, I guess, since he asked him to sign it to Marv, although I'm sure that was for a lot of people that weren't sure that's who it is or didn't know who that was. For anyone who doesn't know, I kind of mentioned this in the previous review, but Marv Wolfman was the writer of the Crisis on Infinite Earth series. He also was apparently heavily involved in doing this crossover, so it was great to see him make an appearance. That was a fun little cameo. It was kind of a shame George Perez, who was the who was the artist for Crisis on Infinite Earths, couldn't have made a cameo. Marv Wolfman wrote the story, but it was Perez's art of bringing literally pretty much every DC Comics character together that helped truly make Crisis feel like the special event it was in the comics. It was a shame they couldn't have gotten both of them. Very likely they tried, and for whatever reason they couldn't do it. But it was great to see Marv Wolfman in there. That was a nice little nod to the comic book tie-in. I don't know if they've had any of the writers or artists from DC appear in an Arrowverse show. I would definitely be in favor of more appearances like that in future Arrowverse. That's a nice little nod for the fans. And I think then, like I said, I did write any of this down, so I may be jumping around a little, but we basically got the Bebo fight then. Always great to see Bebo. I would argue Bebo was the true greatest cameo for this entire crossover, as we saw him have sort of a rematch with Sarah and the Legends with some of their friends in there. But it wasn't a rematch, it was Sargon, who, if any of you don't know, was a character from the comic books. That was a nice little fun diversion. They probably could have done without it, but it was fun, and it gave a chance for all the characters to interact together on the new world. It didn't really serve the grand scheme of things, but it was nice. So I was happy to see that. We then found out that the Anti-Monitor was still alive, and we sat down for the big smackdown on this new Earth, which Black Lightning also came over for. I think most assumed he was in this new Earth, but it was nice that they confirmed it and that they got him along. I mean, what better way to usher in your officially joining the Arrowverse than to smack down with the Anti-Monitor? I guess he didn't really smack down with the Anti-Monitor. He was with Killer Frost and Heatwave fighting off the Shadow Demons. Close, they weren't Shadow Demons, I'm sorry. Fighting off the Monitor's henchmen. Close enough. But then we got the big smackdown with the Anti-Monitor. I don't know if I liked it better than the one in the ravine or not. It definitely spent more money to make. It was a bigger budget thing. Shrinking him down was kind of weird as a solution, although I guess it leaves him open for him to bring him back. He did eventually. I don't remember if he came back in the comics or not. They did a sequel to Crisis. I don't think he actually came back, but it leaves him open for him to bring him back. I mean, they changed plenty of other things. It just felt like them hitting him with the ball. Maybe they could have done a more exciting ending, but they have budgetary reasons. We got plenty of impressive moments. I'm not complaining about it. It kind of felt like their grand finale was just tying up a loose end, but it worked well enough. Then we got to Oliver's funeral. I didn't say much about Oliver earlier, actually. I feel kind of bad about that, since obviously him being the Spectre was a big deal. I like the way they portrayed the Spectre. He looked close enough to the comics. Oliver was never the Spectre in the comics, but they gave him the real pale, whitish face. He wore the green cloak. It looked like an Arrowverse version of the Spectre. It would have been hard to do a truly comic-accurate version of the Spectre. Probably would have cost a lot of money to do that, and they spent enough money already. His big death was well done as it was. However, we already got the heartfelt death of people standing around him and crying in part 1, so them doing it again just felt like a retread at that point. The actors did good with what they had. I think it was a problem with their whole killing him and bringing him back. They should have probably found another way to make him the Spectre. Maybe they should have killed him off on Arrow. I don't know. It was hard to really feel a tear-jerking moment when we got our tear-jerking moment back in part 1. I don't know how they could have gotten around that. I think they could have done better. I'm sorry. Then we ended it with the big moment, the formation of, I don't know if it was the Justice League or the Super Friends, although in a sense those are the same team if you really think about it. But either way, we knew what it was. We got the Hall of Justice. We'd seen that building before, but it officially became essentially the Hall of Justice. We got the team formed. We got a good setup for the next crisis, although I don't know what on earth they're going to do to top this one. Good luck, guys. Really. But we got to set up for an easy way for the heroes to gather together in future crises. I don't think they'll ever call themselves the Justice League. I've got a feeling they're not going to be allowed to do that. But it worked out anyway. I also love the quasi-appearance of Gleek. That cracked me up. I can't think of a more perfect way to end what had basically been a celebration of DC and TV and movies than with Gleek. That was hilarious. And while it wasn't the actual ending, it was the perfect way to sort of end things as far as On Earth 1. Then we got the nice little montage at the end, which was great fan service. Obviously, unlike the original Crisis, the multiverse has apparently been reformed, because as we saw with the cameos at the end, a new multiverse was formed. And with it, we got cameos from Stargirl, or rather we got a sneak peek of Stargirl as it was, the first look at Stripe, the first look at the other members of the Justice Society. I did a review on the Stargirl trailer, so if anyone's seen that, they know I'm a fan of Stargirl. So I loved getting that. That made my day. I'd about decided the rumors of a Stargirl cameo weren't true, but even though I'm sure that was a scene or an outtake from the Stargirl TV series, it was great to see. It's totally got me even more hyped for Stargirl. We also got an appearance by Titans, Swamp Thing, the Doom Patrol, and a little teaser for Green Lantern, which for anyone who don't know, Green Lantern is going to be a TV series on HBO+. I don't know which Green Lantern it'll be, which is obviously why they didn't show that. I also don't know if they even cast who will play whatever Green Lantern it'll be, but I still love the teaser for it. We also got confirmation that Titans and Doom Patrol are not on the same Earth, which had been oftentimes debated if they were in the same continuity. Technically not. That was a fun little nod. I also love the scene of Brandon Routh doing the sort of Christopher Reeves-esque pose. It's a shame they couldn't have used the footage of Christopher Reeves doing that from the Superman movie. That would have been a great way to end it. They probably weren't allowed to do that, but that was a good little nod to it. Definite way to end the whole thing. So that was Crisis on Infinite Earths. My final thoughts are, I loved it. I know I was critical of some parts, and it wasn't without its flaws. A lot of people were a lot harder on it and quicker to point out more of its flaws, and they exist. The Arrowverse is great, but their stories have certainly never been perfect. But at the end of the day, I just don't care. I couldn't bring myself to do anything but love it. What we really got here was a love letter to DC and TV and movies wrapped up in a great crossover between the Arrowverse. And we got, I'm going to name them off, but I'm obviously going to miss someone. But we got tie-ins with the Batman movie. We got tie-ins with the 1966 Batman. We got Smallville in there. We got the Titans appearing in there. In fact, we got all the DC Universe shows. We got Swamp Thing. We got Stargirl. We got a Super Friends character appearance, sort of, but close enough. I'll take it. We got to see Ashley Scott reprise her role in Birds of Prey. By the way, I am very sorry that I mixed her up in the last review with the actress who is playing her in the Birds of Prey movie coming up. That was my bad. But we got to see Ashley Scott play Huntress in the Birds of Prey, and Dinah Meyer reprise her role as Oracle/Batgirl on top of that. Who else? I don't even know who else we got. I'm sure we got Ezra Miller as the Flash in the DC Extended Universe to appear on it. We just literally got so many characters from so many TV and movies. We could obviously pick apart who didn't make a cameo. There were a lot of reasons that those probably weren't used. There were licensing reasons. Some of those shows aren't even owned by Warner Brothers. There was obviously availability of the actors, but what we got was great. I don't think there's ever been anything quite like this done before. I mean, we went all the way back to the 60s for the guest appearances and tied it all together into one storyline. That was such an ambitious project done on a relatively low budget because this was the CW in the Arrowverse. They obviously spent more money than they normally do, but they didn't have Avengers Infinity War type money to throw around, yet they managed to pull it off. And it was clear that they were serious about what they were doing, that they wanted to give us and deliver something special with this. This was not phoned in to cash in on Crisis, at least not in my opinion. They worked hard and they gave us what I think was the best they could have done. We could pick apart who wasn't in it, we could pick apart the storyline elements, and people have every right to do that. Don't get me wrong. But me personally, I'm going to give them a pass on all the flaws this had, because what they did and the good parts of it outweigh any flaws for this. For this one time, I don't care what mistakes you made, because you gave us one of the biggest love letters to DC TV, movies, animation, to some extent even the comics. And for this lifelong DC fan, that was all I really wanted. So I tip my hat to them. Best crossover ever. Again, I don't know how they're going to top this. And I don't know, I didn't really get into it, but what some of the teases are going to be for the future shows. But right here, right now, I give this an A+. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And you can check out my other DC TV reviews and other TV and comic reviews on this channel. I'm Dan the Man, and I'll see you next time.